Good. Okay, so that level looks...
My level looks fine.
My level looks okay too, or... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, what do you think?
No, I think it's fine.
Yeah,
Don't worry, we can compress it. You're talking to a music producer here, you know.
You're gonna fix it?
Gonna fix it, you know. We're gonna tune it up, you know. We're gonna chop it up, put a house beat on top of it, and it's a hit song. Yo, it's your boy NSG right about now. I am here with the boss man himself, Alex Branson. How you doing, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, the full title, ABC Music Talk Podcast.
ABC Music Talk.
Because unfortunately, there's another one called ABC Music.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's an American TV broadcasting called ABC as well. So
there is. It makes everything really hard.
There is also a song by Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, called ABC as well. So
yeah, and it's also the beginning of this thing called the alphabet.
That's correct.
Yeah,
absolutely essential for communication.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's the beginning of everything.
It is. All right, let's segue to communication. You've been in the music game for a long time and you're trying to build something in Asia at the moment with Empire, which is working with me, part of it, and you do a lot of consulting work. How crucial it is to have communication skills.
Communication's everything, to me at least. Yeah. So actually I studied communication at A-level, and for me that really helped me understand how to improve myself and others around me. And communication just... And if you think about what we do in the music industry, we're communicating all the time for our artists to their audience, and that's really what's happening. Whether that's through the music or whether it's through any of the marketing that
through the marketing is communicating. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Of course it is. Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. So yeah, there's communication at a sort of corporate level or just an interpersonal level, but it is everything in my opinion.
What kind of problems do you encounter dealing with like artists and labels, and how do you maintain a smooth, clear communication?
Start by listening. Yeah, no, I find that's always helped me build relationships with other people, and that's of course what we're ultimately talking about here. Communications are the sort of building blocks of relationships, and that's really what you're getting at there, because that extends past the actual sort of verbal communication. It goes into how you literally feel about somebody, and if you get a bad feeling about what somebody that you're trying to work with, that's probably not going to go so well.
No.
You can have the best contract in the world, but if that relationship has broken down because you've not communicated properly, then it's not going to work out. So but I suppose a large part of just on the theme of communication, a large part of my career, I think, has been in and around this thing called metadata. That was by sheer accident, and that was never what I intended to do with my life. But I saw the birth of what people think of metadata now at an earlier stage, and like from a record company's point of view, at least, metadata for the music, so for the track and the album, it used to be written out as something called label copy, which was the literal sort of the words that would go on the back of a CD or a vinyl. Back in the day, before really digital consumption was a thing. I'm afraid I'm that old that I remember it.
Where they used to press CDs and send them to DJs and send them to
they do
radio.
still do they still sort of do that, but
they still produce CDs and send them out.
Of course,
wow.
Yeah, and I know in Indonesia that's not so common these days, but yeah, I mean, look, just the sort of the basics of communicating your new release information through to them, that's gone through a massive evolution. I remember it when it was sort of 5 fields of metadata, which is typically sort of termed as like ID3 tags in an MP3.
ID3 tags.
There you go.
Wow, some people might not know that. But on a level though, Alex, I just realized as a creative person, every time I start making content, whether it's YouTube or whether it's stuff that you put out releases, metadata really puts your stuff at the right places. For example, I had a few viral videos and I used this service called vidIQ, which YouTube was very important with putting tagging and making sure all of the description is right. I started doing that properly, investing the time in putting the data. It is not fun, but all the stuff that went viral had metadata in it. It had tagging, it had description, it had links, it had contact person. I made a bunch of music video, cover songs, whatever. All the stuff that went viral, all the stuff that kind of got into the system to the targeted audience. I don't know if it's algorithm, but it works. So man, could you tell what happens when you put the correct data into the assets?
The concept of indexing on the internet is quite world terms. I mean, this is how Google works.
That's how Google works.
Right, it will literally just go off and search all the web pages and index it, so that when you go onto that very simple, wonderful UI that we're all very familiar with, which is the Google homepage, and you type in a word or a number of words using, say, maybe plus symbols and things like that to be a bit more accurate. That's what it'll do. It will return results based on its ability to go off and index the web, and actually, on a sort of more music sort of focused slant, I suppose. In one of the companies that I work with, they are. It's essentially an A&R scouting tool, and it uses the same concept of bots, and that's what it does. It will go off and it will look for lots of instances of music, and so it's all based on the Spotify API. So it's using all of the metadata that was originally sent by the record companies to Spotify. Spotify have this API that's open. Anyone can use it, and it's essentially access to the metadata in the catalog. This company uses it so that they can get the sort of baseline of what the catalog is, and then it'll go off and it'll look for all the instances of that music, whether it's a SoundCloud link that's sitting in a blog, so you can make that connection, whether it's then connected to a playlist that's perhaps also put on a web page, and all of these things are indicators of how popular that particular track and therefore that artist is, and that's then being used in an A&R scouting tool. And so if you want to get signed, if you're not currently signed, make sure your metadata is good. Right?
Making sure your metadata,
and not just in the submission to the DSPs. If I don't know,
DSP meaning Spotify and Apple Music and
apologies if there are any acronyms.
No, it's fine. It's cool. Don't worry. I'll be the one. I'll translate into
Well, that's funny. That's normally my job on my podcast.
Really? Yeah,
well,
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, my audience, they need to be like, all right, okay. You know what? If you get all that shit together, like the machine, the algorithm gods will prefer you. It's like praying to the gods, the gods of the algorithm. But still, you need to make the dope music first, always, isn't it? Yeah,
and get your data right once first, forevermore. All the contracts that you produce, and so if you're doing a synchronization licensing deal, so that's where you're meshing together a visual and the audio for, say, like an advert or a TV program, the opening title sequence to a TV program. If you're doing that license agreement, then you'll want to put the name of the track in there, right? And so if you've got that right once in your database, you can just pull that straight into the contract. You don't need to retype it, because that's where mistakes happen. Human beings are fallible. They will make these mistakes all the time. Especially with numbers. We transpose this stuff all the time. So
I make that mistakes too when if you get it right in the first time.
Yeah. And I interviewed a lady from a company called Verified Media. It's one of these blockchain companies that's looking to try and tidy up metadata, generally speaking, on the internet for the record industry. And she sort of gave the example of how do you spell Jay-Z, and if you look on the web, there are various spellings of it. Yeah. I don't know. Do we really want to talk about metadata for this whole podcast?
No. Don't worry. I can always.
But it
is important because, again, like I said, a lot of the maturity in what I do in music is having my team understand and respect that. And once you respect how important it is to input the right data, not only that you appreciate the shit that you create, but it also gives it value, and it's sort of like it takes you to the next level, realizing that these songs are just not disposable. These songs should breathe. You might never know where the revenue comes from. Like, for example, like I was checking my data yesterday, and like, rare, I have got this amount from Facebook. Usually I don't get this amount from Facebook. What are the musical services of Facebook? I don't even know. I only know Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Like, all right, cool, whatever.
You're making money from Facebook?
Huh?
You're making money from Facebook?
Yeah.
Did you just say? Yeah, no, okay, so I can tell you about that, because I actually work for Facebook doing some of the licensing in Southeast Asia.
Oh, for real? Okay. Boom, because I was like, okay.
So what happened was, you've got the record industry, and they don't typically like anyone using their music without, one, asking permission, and two, paying for it. So what Facebook did is they realised that people were using music on, say, the timeline or whatever, and they weren't paying anyone for the use of that music.
So they've got a content ID kind of thing.
So they've got a content ID type of thing, right? And so what they did was when they first came out with it, when I worked with them, they didn't know how to apportion that money, because if you think about it, it's different from YouTube, right? If you go onto YouTube and you play a video, you're playing that video, right? And it's an action that you take very purposefully. You can put all these adverts, so money is very attributable to that video. And they didn't exactly know when the advertising, because there wasn't necessarily adverts running, prior to or whatever. There were adverts running around the pages. And with all these platforms, they're always adding something, and that's why people like me still have a job. It's never a sort of a one-hit wonder in terms of doing these deals. And so, but yes, no. So it's obviously Facebook is Instagram as well, but creating services where music is consumed, it's like, where does the responsibility lie? Now, the technology companies often will say, "Not us. Sorry, we're just providing this file sharing service or whatever it might be." And we can't control what's coming into our systems, but ultimately they can, because there's things like
they can, and they have the money as well, and and then
technology's moved on, right? If they have the ability to limit, say, adult content on their services, they can absolutely identify music.
Do
you know what I mean? It's like it's
audio fingerprint. It should.
And don't get me wrong. It's never as simple as that, right?
No, of course.
And if you think about the nature of music, it's often quite a derivative beast, right? In terms of samples that are used or things like that. So it can make the identification using, say, audio fingerprinting complicated, and that's why we have these kind of claiming systems and takedown processes and all the rest of it that's sort of hardwired now. The record industry makes music. They make records, right? That's what they do. They are not technologists typically. No. They've become more so.
They become more asset management now,
right? But they've
to an extent.
Well, they've had to become experts in all of this stuff,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
As an artist, as a creator, you have to be good at almost everything, and that's a really tall order to expect somebody to be really good at. I mean, you have to be like the video director, you have to be the photographer, you have to be the video editor, you have to be the cameraman, you have to be all these different things just to make a music video, and then you've got social media that you've got to be an expert, and you've got to know how to write copy, you've got to know how to the right times to post something, which platforms should work with. All of these things are skills that are very specialist, and in the old world you'd have outsourced all of that, but you can't do it now.
Yep. It's a crazy time now, isn't it? Back in the day, it's just outsourced, isn't it?
And I think the thing to do is to know what you can do and what you can't do.
Okay.
If you've got the option of getting an expert to do something for you,
okay,
I would take that option, right? If you don't, then you've just got to figure out a way of doing it yourself. And unfortunately, computers in general, computing has enabled us, as we're talking about these apps. I mean, you got to understand, for me, this is a world away from my early days of computing.
Right. I mean, mate, I used to sell CDs in clubs after MCing or after performing in clubs, and now it's you can't do that shit anymore. It's everything's streams, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of marketing and creating.
Yeah, in terms of marketing, it's different now. It's just man, that's nuts, yo. But again, man, going back, again, the foundation, metadata, putting the right data on the art that you work so hard on. It needs love. It needs lots of love, and it's a painful love.
If you're an unsigned artist, you're typically going to use I built a platform for Warner Music called Level, levelmusic.com, which is a DIY distribution service. Right. And what I did was I designed the interface so that it was really easy to use, and so that anyone could do it, and you didn't need any specialist knowledge, because I would guide you kind of through the whole process.
Right.
And pretty much, some better than others, a lot of these platforms, including, Empire, who's one of my clients now, as you know, we have this interface, and it says type the artist name in, type the track name in. It's not complicated in that sense. And when you get into, say, unique identifiers like the International Standard Recording Code or ISRC code,
you can generate.
The companies like Empire will generate that for you if you don't have one. So you don't even need to kind of even really understand what that is, other than you need to know that. So the whole industry's had to get a lot better at things like that. I mean, genre in particular is a particularly difficult one, especially over territories, and especially as you mentioned earlier, where you've got subgenres. So under dance music or dance electronic music, or as the Americans like to call it, EDM, you've then got sort of multiple other sort of fractured moments of that, whether it's progressive house or trance or any of the derivatives of that.
House, Chicago house.
It is endless, I assure you.
Now, future house.
So it's been really interesting because what a lot of distribution companies did is they took the fairly well put together Apple genres and they used that as the basis of their digital platforms. So actually what you've now got is you've got Apple dictating how people understand genres. And that wasn't how it was before. I mean, the genre trees that we were operating on were enormous before, and we had to kind of distill all this stuff down into what was acceptable by companies like Apple.
Right.
So they sort of dumbed it down in some ways.
I get what you mean. Yeah, man. All right, cool, man. I mean, that's metadata, the fundamental of this digital business thing. Get your shit right, people. Mr. B here is
Well,
the boss.
I'm watching, and I'm taking notes, and I'm going to score you all at the end of this.
Yes.